December 4th, 1974, Spokane, Washington. Laurie Partridge wasn't feeling well, so she left school early. She had a 2-mile walk home. A man witnessed her walking by as he shoveled his driveway that afternoon. Another girl out riding her horse said she may have seen her, but she wasn't sure. Someone else saw the beautiful 17-year-old girl that day, a predator. Laurie would never make it home. The police fumbled the one good lead they had. Laurie had been carrying 2 tickets to a Beach Boys concert. The family begged them to check the tickets at the door, but they refused to. They didn't want to interrupt the concert, and they still believed Laurie was just another runaway. After the show, the venue confirmed all the tickets had been turned in. Laurie's tickets had been used. Were her kidnappers at the concert? We will never know. 50 years later, this case is still unsolved. What happened to Laurie Partridge? You're watching Chasing Justice with award-winning crime writer Sonova Cantrell. Stay tuned. We'll be talking about cold cases, criminal conspiracies, corruption, and the dark psychology of criminal masterminds. I know you're going to enjoy the show, but before you do, please like, subscribe, and share. All of that BS really helps us defeat the algorithm monster. Okay, so this case is very heartbreaking because this case was absolutely solvable 50 years ago. Now that 50 years has passed, unless you get someone coming forward, there's a very good chance that this case is going to remain cold. And that's something we don't ever want to admit. That is something we don't ever want to happen. So we're going to try to heat this case up a little bit. And I want you guys to share it to everywhere that you can, because this is a family that has had 50 years and they are still in the same exact spot as they were 50 years ago. Now, who is Laurie Lynn Partridge? She went missing on December 4th, 1974 from Spokane, Washington. And she was 17 years old, and she had plenty of credits to graduate, so they allowed her to leave early if she chose to. And she wasn't feeling well that day, and she had to work. She worked at the local theater. She had to work that evening, so she wanted to go home and take a nap and lay down for a while. So she couldn't get a ride home, though. She called her mom, she called her dad. For one reason or another, they couldn't get off work, they couldn't get there. Whatever the reason is, they didn't ever say publicly. Neither one of them could get there. She decided she was going to walk home anyways. She wasn't going to stay at the school. She was going to walk home. She only had a 2-mile trek to get home. So she was just going to walk home. Now, she was walking down the path from her school to her house. She went through one small little neighborhood. There was an older gentleman there who was outside at the time. So it was about noon. It was cold. It was snowy. It's in Washington, so it's probably plenty of snow. But December 4th, he was out shoveling his driveway, and he noticed her walk by. So the first little neighborhood she walked through, you did have a witness that seen her. Then there was several fields and wooded areas before the next neighborhood would come up, and then she would be on her way home. She would be getting close to home. Well, that second neighborhood, no one's seen her walk through there. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't walk through there. That just means that no one was out and about and noticed her. But no one noticed her. There was no witnesses that said they seen her there. Now, back when she was going through this field area, this open area, this place where there's no houses, there was a young woman who was riding her horse in the snow. And she said she noticed her walking by. She said she noticed a strange vehicle. She noticed a strange vehicle that she described as a truck with a van back end, which we're all a bit confused by. And there was a man with a shotgun outside of the vehicle. And then there was a girl that she thought may have been Laurie. This man didn't necessarily look like he was threatening her. He wasn't pointing the gun at her. He just had a shotgun. I contend that it could be he was a hunter. He could, that could have been he, and it could have been the girl. He could have been, saying, "Hey, do you need a ride home? Are you okay?" It could have been nothing. It could have been his daughter. We don't know. And then there was another witness that came forward that said something about a Pinto
And so there's been little bits of information, but the most disturbing information, you will find that this young woman had 2 tickets to a Beach Boys concert. The dad had purchased 2 tickets for Laurie, and they were going to go together to this Beach Boys concert. And she was carrying them with her in her purse. Okay, she kept hold of the tickets, and it was supposed to happen a few days after she disappeared. Okay, those tickets were numbered. So the mother, after she gets home and she realizes her daughter, she believes her daughter never made it home, but she gets a call from her boss, her daughter's boss, saying that her daughter never made it to work. That's when she starts to panic. That's when, they start frantically trying to figure out what happened. That's when they call the police, everything. It was maybe the next day or a couple days later. She remembers, says, "Hey, wait a minute. Laurie had 2 tickets to the Beach Boys concert over here at a local venue. And why don't you send some men over there and check everybody's ticket as they come in?" I mean, that would be a standard procedure to, to find out who, if these tickets show up. Well, the police would not allow the family to go and stop people and check their tickets as they go in. They didn't want to interrupt the concert goers. They did show up. A couple officers did show up and look around to see if they seen Laurie show up. And then by the time the concert was over and they interviewed the venue, they found out that those 2 tickets were actually used. So somebody was in possession of Laurie's 2 tickets to that concert, and that opportunity was missed. The daughter did say in a podcast, one of the sisters, she said that they did send a couple officers over there, and they showed up and looked around to see if they could see Laurie. So basically, they were still operating under the concept that she had run away. Talking about the girl that had no reason to run away whatsoever. She wasn't the type to disappear on her own because she was actually looking forward to an adult life. She had a fiance, they were planning on getting married right after high school, and he lived on the family farm, just, not too far away, and they had already made plans on moving to that farm. And so she was on the yearbook staff, she was on the drill team, she was all this and that. She had a deep-seated faith, and she was always trying to get her friends and her family to go to church, and things like that. So she was very grounded type person. She wasn't flighty, she wasn't on drugs, she didn't do anything out of the normal. She was pretty, it almost sounds like she was kind of the overachiever. Some websites say that they found her purse and the contents of her purse, and it was scattered along the road there in the area where she was supposedly taken. But the sister adamantly refutes that. She said nothing, not a stitch of anything belonging to her sister was ever found. She said no, the purse was not found, the contents weren't found. The only thing that was so-called found was the fact that those 2 tickets were turned in to the venue. But if you go on the Charlie Project website, they said that the contents of her purse was found. Now, they said that she was last seen by a witness walking south on Havana Street near 37th Avenue, and there were reports that a green Ford Pinto station wagon was in the area at the same time, and they wasn't sure that it may have possibly been following her. But they weren't sure. So that was one eyewitness who they thought may have seen her. But see, all of this information is coming in a few days later, because for the first couple days, the family had to fight with the police, because we're talking 74. Runaways was a massive thing back then. In 2011, it says investigators said they had a new witness who may have seen Partridge walking home. It says that the authorities haven't released this witness's identity, but this person said that they thought they saw Laurie about 4:15, and that would have been several hours after she left the school. She said a white male in his 40s or 50s, as well as the white truck and the dark colored door with a van back in was nearby. This was the thing that they were talking about. They thought they saw somebody with a shotgun and this strange looking vehicle. Now, I was thinking the only thing I could possibly think of was maybe this was a truck that had some kind of camper shell. But I'm sitting here going, why didn't they say a truck with a camper shell? Why would they say a truck with a van back in? Can somebody send me a picture through Messenger or a link to something? I have no idea what a truck with a van back end is. This right here, by them not doing their job on December 9th, 1974, by not going ahead and saying, okay, this might be a runaway, but we're going to do our due diligence and make sure. And by them not doing that, they protected the kidnapper and potential killer of Laurie Partridge. Well, see, they make all these big assumptions, and you never want to assume. You can take your assumption and make it into a theory, but you want to make sure your facts line up and all of those threads lead in that direction. So they made some big assumptions. First, the police assumed she ran off on her own. Bad idea. The next thing, they assumed that they said, well, there was a neighborhood and then there was a wooded area and a field with nobody, and then there was another neighborhood. Since she was seen in the first neighborhood, she wasn't witnessed in the second neighborhood. She must have disappeared in that field wooded area. And I'm sitting here going, you don't know that. Stanley Burnson was classed. If you read around, people calling him a serial killer. Technically, a serial killer has to kill 3 people before they're classed as a serial killer. That's according to the FBI. You have to kill 3 people, and then that's technically the baseline for a serial killer. 3 people, usually with some space in between, with a cooling off period in between. 3 people. I take it a little bit further. You have to if you wanted to study the psychology of a serial killer, most serial killers, they have a more of a predator psychology about them. They have they have a different way of thinking. Their psychosis is a little bit different. They're not a spree killer. They're not a mass killer. They hunt and target their prey like a hunter, and they take out their prey, and they have a particular type of prey that they like. They hunt people like animals. And so there's a little bit different psychology about a serial killer. Now, there were some websites and things that labeled Stanley Burnson as a serial killer. He's only been tied to 2 murders. And if you in prison, he kind of him-hawed around and said he may have been responsible for other murders. Once you understand prison, the life and society of long-term inmates, you understand that a lot of their stuff is BS, because the more they confess to, the bigger and badder they seem to be, and they win this morbid street cred. So a lot of people were confessed to crap they weren't even involved in, just because it makes them look bigger and badder and more so-called respect behind bars. Two people, and those 2 people he was personally connected to, and he didn't start killing for I think it was either 2 or 4 years. I think 2 years. 2 years after she went missing. So if he was a serial killer and this was his first hit and nobody knew about it, it could have possibly been. But you have to understand that, for one, he wasn't what the definition of a serial killer is. He wasn't that. And two, the psychology of his killing, of his thought process, his behavior leading up to those two kills weren't actually what you would class as a serial killer. He didn't have that type. These were two people that he perceived had wronged him, that he knew, that he took out. It wasn't the same psychosis. And so the only thing that ties this man to this case is the fact that the mother seen him in the news years later and said, oh, well, hey, he lived around here and he traveled the same roads. Maybe he's seen her and he took her. So she kept, trying to hound the police into doing something about that. Well, they did question him. And he, even though he had confessed to all kinds of BS that he wasn't tied to, he flat out denied. He's like, absolutely not. That wasn't me.
People have also tried to tie this case to Ted Bundy. But Ted Bundy wasn't in the area. He was actually in Salt Lake City at the time committing crimes over there. He also did not drive a Pinto, and Laurie did not fit his target. He liked women with long dark hair split in the middle. Laurie was a blonde.
But I thought this would be a good opportunity to explain the differences between when you start studying behavioral psychology, and I wish that they would take this and make it down into standard training for every law enforcement officer. When you start studying behavioral psychology, you're not in reactive mode. So you're not taking a case, you're not walking into a crime scene and reacting to what you see and what you can observe and what kind of evidence you can glean from it, and then trying to build a case. You are actually looking at this same crime scene and you can see patterns of behavior left over in this crime scene, and those patterns of behavior will build up into an outline of who actually did this. And then once you get a suspect, you can see if that behavior actually lines up with this person. And so it helps you track the person down, but you're not investigating a case in reactive mode. You're being more proactive. And so once you understand the psychology, you'll also understand most of our behavior is habitual. Most of our behavior is progressive. You can see the progression of this. So once you get a certain behavior identified, then you can say, okay, does this person line up with this? And you'll see that there's usually so many red flags that are missed leading up to what police usually label an incident. And then you realize, once you go back and you study all this, you realize it wasn't an incident at all. It was building over time. This was an event that was created months ago, years ago. This was an event that was created and building up. And so when you understand that, and you understand that most people don't change, and if they do, it takes a lot of effort over a period of time, you'll understand that the psychology of someone like Stanley Bernson may or may not fit this type of case. And so you still go ask because you want to chase every possible theory and every possible lead. You don't want to overlook anything, but you also know that that's a very thin possibility that he could have possibly done something. Also, you also want to take into consideration most killers, if they do stranger abductions and then abduct someone they know. So if there's someone they know that's hurting them or perceived that they're anger against, it's usually the other way around. They will do violence towards the people they know and then go to stranger abduction. So it's backwards. And that doesn't mean it's impossible, but all of those things kind of make it a little more improbable.
So what happened to Laurie Partridge in 1974?
Her family has lived all these years without any answers. I believe both of her parents have passed away now, and she has a couple of siblings left. By not doing their job in the beginning, the police have condemned this family to a life sentence. If you know anything about this case, please call the police. The new group of law enforcement officers are doing the best they can, but when mistakes are made in the beginning, it's hard to compensate for those mistakes. Please call in any tips you have. Laurie's family needs answers.